All right, Tactical Tuesday. Exciting, exciting, exciting. All right, why don't we just go around then. Michelle?
Hello. I haven't really been getting a lot of takers for morning hours, so I might just ask like what people's general plans are and see if they're any.
You should know we are actually going to get the Australians, and they should.
Oh my God!
They just sent over the names today.
Perfect. When is that starting?
Well, we're going to talk with them and figure it out. But earlier today, they said, "Oh yeah, we got 3 people," and then just a few moments ago, I got their names. So Aubrey and I are going to reach out to them and try to do some onboarding. Wow. But apparently, there was another lockdown in their area, and so that caused some delays.
Okay. Okay. That's a shame. So I might pause them until we know the date, which might be on Thursday, which is fine. Yeah. Then or next week. So let me know. But like until then, I can schedule stuff to do during that time. Yeah. So, which is okay if someone needs it. That's fine. But hey, Bryce, sorry you were having trouble with the Zooms.
Michelle, also, yeah, I was going to say, you might want to just say there are hours that people can schedule with you, but you're not going to just sit on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, just people never seem to schedule hours. So.
Well, if they assume that it's always there, then it's not the expectation.
No, I mean before I had office hours and I said schedule time with me. Nobody ever,
But
so,
now they're enticed. They know it.
And you can also say to schedule during this block. You can say I'll be here during this block.
They have the craving. Yeah.
So you can tell them those are potential hours of availability. Sure. Schedule it if you need it. But otherwise, I'm not cutting you off.
All right, perfect. So other things are we got the org secrets installed. So now the question is, David said where we run testing interviews. Wherever we run testing interviews, we need to set up an account to run the testing interviews. And then we need to change all the secrets. So maybe we'll set the org secrets again.
I think that's a conversation we're going to have more in detail after we cycle through everyone's bit. But yeah, I agree.
Okay, so I'm done then, I think. Carry on.
All right, then Aubrey.
I don't have much new. This is Donna's last week, and so today will be her last stand-up. So just going to call that out at stand-up and say thank you to her. And
everybody get balloons ready.
Yeah, if we got some balloon backgrounds. And then it also made me think that I would love to just kind of get a feel for when the students are going to be ending, and try to do like a send-off for everyone.
Yeah.
Little something.
That maybe we can see if we can include Bodana in. So like make sure it's at times that. Do we want to do a little? I was thinking a little. We talked a bit about a little, kind of celebration for her, and her participation in this. Just to say kind of goodbye in case she can't. In case we just don't. Letting her in.
Yeah. So what were you thinking, Aubrey?
I was thinking so Fridays we don't necessarily get all the students. So like as far as like an end of summer thing, maybe doing a casual Friday, not on Friday. And I think that also considering Bodana is heading out early, we would also be able to grab Donna because she is not available on Fridays. Mm-hmm. I don't know what her availability is going to be because she's starting some new life things, which is very exciting. But yeah, so then if we can do something for Donna this week, I don't know, just a little time. She really has enjoyed this project, so would want to really make sure that she understands that we enjoyed and appreciate her.
And she thought we were just going to disappear, like that was going to be it, and it was like, no.
It's so funny because I've told her like stay on Teams, share your social media if you want to be involved with people.
But I think it'd be nice to have just a thing now so that she feels a sense of accomplishment and completion, and invite people to it.
Aubrey, why don't you I mean, you have to talk with people and check-ins anyway about deadlines and stuff. So you can get a sense for people's last days, and then we can try to find a time that will catch most people before they leave, and then schedule a time that would be some for people like Donna could maybe pop in.
Yeah. Okay, great. Other than that, nothing new this week.
All right.
Maybe for the final thing, we could do like a doodle or something so that we can actually figure out
Yeah.
like what would work best for most people.
Yeah. Once I get a feel for like which week
Okay.
we'll start to lose people, because I think some students are planning on staying till literally the last moments, and some,
Mhm.
like myself, are hopping off early, and what the
You're not
flexibility
hopping off that
is.
early. You're just giving yourself a week vacation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
A week to
still.
rest.
Yeah. And then we've got some people who don't even start school till after Labor Day, so
That's true. Yeah,
we've
different schedules.
yeah, we've got different schedules. So I'll figure out what a week that's in there, and then we'll send out a poll. Yes.
I have a different issue that made me think of, which is I'm not sure what your schedule is looking like, Aubrey, but I know that documentation and that kind of thing was a thought earlier on. And if so, do we want to schedule time specifically for that? To like at least make an assessment of like what could be done in the future, make GitHub issues for it, stuff like that.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll message you offline.
Okay.
Thank you, Stan. Quentin.
So I owe Bryce some work on integrating some of the DocAssembly side of some of the e-filing proxy server stuff. So that's on my to-do list. But I have been working on this feature to let people kind of snapshot and fast forward their interview answers. So maybe I'll do a demo today just so more of the students can see it and see how it will help them. There are bound to be some bugs with it because it's not something I think we're gonna let end users take advantage of, but I think it might help some of the development workflow go a little bit faster. So I was thinking about it yesterday, how helpful it would have been for, when we were doing some of those little demos in the morning with Louisiana, just if they can just load their answers and see the output, which is a lot of what test people want to run there.
Okay, cool. Bryce.
I don't think I have much.
Also not much. We had talked about, just to confirm, that the proxy server, we might want it to be able to handle like more than one DocAssembly server talking to it. So we could have like one proxy server for the apps test and dev stuff, or maybe just app dev and test and one for prod. And maybe so it can scale up eventually. Okay, cool.
Yes, I had
Because
that conversation.
And is
Yeah,
that
okay.
MVP? Is that part of
well,
the MVP?
I'm like doing other stuff. This isn't really like an MVP conversation, but it is more of a like, I'm doing other work that's very related, and how I architect this does affect how it will be able to scale later. And so I'm just trying to make sure I get it right.
Got it.
Leaving doors open.
Yes,
Importantly, leaving doors open.
but that's that.
All right, cool. Well, then my main things were the Australian volunteers. We just got their names, so we'll reach out to them and see about onboarding them. I'm still a little unclear on what amount of time they're interested in volunteering. So that's one of the things we'll find out when we engage with them, which will impact what they're able to do.
Do we know the level of their DocAssembly experience?
They've had a course with some DocAssembly stuff, so they're not newbies.
Okay.
So that changes a little bit of what we can give them. I'm also not clear, we had given them a set of options as to whether or not they wanted to take something new or take something over the line or do feature improvements. We actually did not get clarification of that for this either. So that will be another thing that we will confirm with them when we engage with them. So that it may be that their onboarding process might not there might not be a lot of need for onboarding on DocAssembly side, or just on our workflow side. So we'll see. Gonna have to play that out by ear. Yes, we'll have to play that out by ear. All right. That being said, we have this new automated testing capacity now. We had, and Quentin, I don't think you were on the calls when we realized we do not have a limit for automations because they're open repos. So that changed our calculus about having to treat it as a scarcity product. So that being said, now I think is the time to have the discussion of where in the workflow would we like to try to engage this. And I think we have sort of two levels of automated testing. We have sort of level one, which is just like, does it work, and spit something out at the end. And then there's the second one where we define paths or scenarios through, and then we check to make sure that those don't break. So I think we've effectively been thinking about those as two different times. There might be some time in our workflow we want to just implement one, and sometime in our workflow we want to implement two. And the question, I think, the immediate question is, which of our servers do we need to have these testing things on? So if we're only going to do testing when people aren't testing servers, then we need to make sure it's on a testing server. If we're only going to do it, I don't think we would only do it in development, but if we were going to do it in development, then we need to have it in development. So that being said, I will avoid starting with my opinion so as not to affect discussion. Thoughts? And feel free, because I think not all of us have been on all the calls or anything. So let's feel free to ask Michelle questions and get clarifications on things. To catch people up to speed, Aubrey and Michelle have walked through the interview that Michelle has put together to help people. And we've got a couple of students who volunteered to go through and do walkthroughs from sort of a user feedback end. And I'm Michelle, those have yet to happen yet, right?
Yep, and we have one of the Code for Boston people who is, on the user research team. Not a lot of experience, but on that team that's going to observe with with those two students.
And so our thinking was those students could take their existing interviews that they're working on and just hook them up to what we're calling the type 1, or what I'm calling type 1 testing, maybe a better name for the just, is it broken testing? Does it work testing?
Does it start? Does your interview load? The change to the decision about where to put it does not affect what the students do. Like that's in the organization secrets at this point. So we can make that decision or change it whenever we want.
So I guess it feels like the only thing we really need to know is how many commits we're talking about, right? So it's a performance impact question. So, but it feels like more people are using the dev server, so we should probably put it on the testing server. I think I'm one of the only folks who uses the test server as my main development environment, so, which is just a holdover from when the development server was really too slow to handle everybody.
So would we then be happy with that as a workflow question? Like as people are working through the Trello board and their workflow of a document, it's like, we don't think you need this testing until you get to the point where you're ready to put it on the test server. And will we
I don't think it relates at all to that, to me, but maybe I'm missing something that would.
Well, I'm just trying to think, like if we put it on the test server, then presumably, and maybe I misunderstand the way it operates, can it only operate on interviews on the test server, Michelle?
So no, okay. This is a good time for me to run through. What the test framework does is it uses the information you put in for organization secrets to, in GitHub, whatever branch you're testing on, it will go to whatever server you specify, to whatever account you specify. It will create a project in that account as if it were a developer. It will pull in the branch. It will run the tests on the interview in that branch, and then it will delete the project.
So it doesn't care where the interviews are because it's pulling them from GitHub directly. So
Yeah,
then
I mean,
the
the one
question is just a
downside is that,
performance.
yeah,
So
the one downside is that it doesn't test it an installed version, which behaves just a little bit differently sometimes than,
Yeah, yeah. So then the question really is one of performance. It's the which server do we want doing the commits, etc.
which server do we want, like creating new projects and
Exactly.
running the interviews and creating that activity on the server that might slow other things down.
My sense is it won't slow things down much because most of the interviews don't have that we're adding this testing to don't have .py files. So they will install pretty quickly. So yeah, it seems clearly like it should be the test server to me. And if it becomes too much of a volume, we can decide maybe to trigger it on pull requests instead of every commit or something, I guess. Or figure out if we need a dedicated server for it just to run the test and decide, probably it is worth $20 a month to have everything, have students make less errors. But yeah, I would be fine with starting, just trying it on the test server and see what impact it has.
So I feel like test server is the place.
All right, so
cool.
David, we'll have to either do it alone or I can come along for the ride again.
Can I use the same? Do you have to set up the interview on the test server and then give me the link?
So you can use, it doesn't matter what server you do the interview on, but we do need an account that is an automated testing account on the test server. I don't think we already have one.
Yeah, so we had set up one on the dev server, so we'll just set one up on the test server. Okay.
Yeah, I called the other one automated tests at example.com. So it didn't have a real email. Then I gave it a nice robust password. But I can also set up that account I don't know if I have permissions, but I could at least, request that. I think I have permissions to promote people to dev on that.
Can't you
account.
use the
Test server.
same account for
On the
both
test server.
servers?
Well, the account, like you have to log in separately. If you
but
think
it could
about
be
it
the
that way, you
same,
have to log in separately for each server.
Right.
So
It can be the same. It can be the
It
same
could be
email and password.
Yeah,
right?
same.
sure,
It-
if you want,
it's-
yeah.
But it is just two completely separate servers, and so it doesn't.
Yeah.
They're not linked. You can change the password
Yeah.
on one. It won't change anything.
Oh, okay.
Let's
If
definitely
you want, we can have the same email and password.
let's just have you replicate the same, and then
Okay.
we'll go from there.
Okay.
And then if you run into an issue, let me know. And when you're ready for my secret, let me know. All right, so that's first question. Then second question is more of a workflow question, which is when do we want to, and Aubrey, you might be well positioned to weigh in on this since you've gone through it with the I as a developer and not as the developer of the tool. When do you think this would be, do you think it's well, what are your thoughts about when in the workflow this would start to be useful?
So I feel like I've made assumptions based on my experience as a student that are not necessarily true of all students, but so that's what I'm basing my opinion off
That's
of.
fine. I want your assumptions as a student because that's something I don't have access to.
They're
And
closer than the rest of our assumptions. So.
and I think that the right place to start doing it is when they're starting testing, because I think that's when students start making like kind of haphazard changes and you move a lot more quickly, and you don't necessarily run things all the way through and all of your paths. You're responding to like some of the testing feedback. Oh, I just need to change this little thing. Thank you. You caught this error. And that's when the automated testing would be really helpful. And it's a time when a student has more room for like a different kind of build, getting new information. It's not, we front load them with so much that this is a better time to give them new information, new process, new skills. They've learned a lot. They're learning more. So I think it serves multiple purposes doing it during the testing phase.
When you give them time without putting something else on their plate. And then you have it there to do its job when they're making changes. Michelle.
I really like the points you brought up. And I have one caveat, which is the test that tests whether the interview loads at all, which I think people would find useful because even I, sometimes make delete a comment, don't check it and make a commit and then doesn't actually run. Or I accidentally leave out a template file that I meant to upload and it has an error when it first loads. And that doesn't require a lot of knowledge at all. There's an example on the documentation that
Aubrey, does your suggestion change if we separate clearly out the sort of distinction between the sort of type 1 and type 2 testing? Because I noticed you had mentioned something about the flow through. So if it was just a test to see if it's broken versus the test through, does your answer change at all?
I guess not. I guess yes and no. It's kind of like you're spending students are coming back and forth inside, but it's nice to know exactly. It depends on what kind of committer students are, I think.
Well, here's a
it might be good to be an option.
That's a good point.
Here's a very sort of empirical question. How often do we feel that students prior to testing are running into issues where they do sort of what Michelle was explaining, where you make a mistake?
We could ask today.
Doesn't run. Yeah,
we could ask today and see if it's that's really great idea. Like if it's not a common problem they're running into, then it's not an issue.
Okay, so let's ask that question. And then if the answer is like, oh yeah, that would be super helpful, then we'll think about moving it back. But tentatively, I like the penciled in of setting up testing when you start testing. That also makes a certain,
I like it.
It just sort of makes, it's just sort of, they're named the same thing. Okay.
Yeah, it does change my opinion, because it's like it could be really helpful in like your first 2 weeks when you're still getting a hang of like what's what. And
but you probably don't want to
changes, but I don't want to overwhelm them. That's like the big
Could we
concern.
run if we had the test set up for them in advance, then it would, part of your concern that I was hearing, Aubrey, is like it's one more thing for them to learn how to set up, right? Like we have to take time to have them create the test. But what if we generated it in the Weaver?
Yeah, I was actually thinking the same thing of not even maybe not necessarily in the Weaver, but just like at the end of the Weaver, we say like, hey, link to this thing, set up this thing next. And it acts like a part of the Weaver.
The only barrier I can see is that it needs a GitHub account. Like the whole thing is setting it up with the GitHub account. So if the project doesn't already have a package, then it won't already have a GitHub account, in which case they can't set up testing for it.
But there's nothing that happens inside the package.
No.
In this case, the zip file. Like there's not file.
There are some. Let me think about this. Actually, if we have organization secrets set up, we could just generate the files. We could just generate the files. Sure.
If we save
there is also an open issue on the Weaver to make GitHub repos with the Weaver, which is like a separate UX thing that it shouldn't drag this other thing down. But that feels like a logical step of we link the Weaver to the test generator interview. And then very, very soon afterwards, we allow the Weaver to make a GitHub repo. And it's very easy to go through the test generator after that.
Sure. I think since we have the org secrets now, actually that's the main thing, and other than that it's just the files, so we could generate the files, and I already have Mako for those. I think I have to think about what variables those need, that's all. And then they do need the name of the repository and the owner of the repository. So the package and the owner of the package. So the tests might break the first time they run them because they'll be making their own package and then transferring it. But they'll work after the transfer.
I assume there are some things where we can add them to the zip, but they won't. DocAssembly won't let you push them to GitHub, probably, right? There's a .tests folder, which we can't create on GitHub from DocAssembly, right? Unless we're using the GitHub API.
Well, you can create a .github folder. I don't know what DocAssembly lets you create. So I don't know if it will let you create just random folders? If it doesn't let you create random
So
folders and files in random places, then
So, but so DocAssembly will let you create these things. I don't know if there's some other blacklist of like what it will create on GitHub if you then push it to GitHub. But you can like create it there. It's just DocAssembly lacks in like the sort of user interface to look at subfolders, and it only knows about it's like for actual folders.
the
But I
token
don't-
needs to
but I don't
have
think
both
it's-
repo and workflow permissions. That is
Well,
necessary.
putting that aside, well, I'm just saying, like, can we create the files on GitHub? If someone downloads the zip file and then does a push to GitHub from DocAssembly, that's the part. I'm
Only if
worried
they
about.
have given the GitHub auth for workflow and repo permissions. Like
Why would
if the
you can't make the files?
it can't make the files in the workflow folder, which are the things that run the tests, unless it has workflow permissions.
Well,
I am sure of this.
you can't add random files to a
You
folder
cannot,
in a GitHub repository.
not in the
It will
workflow
let you.
folder. It won't let you unless you have, like, look on the personal access token site. There's a specific selection for repository stuff. Then there's a selection for workflow stuff. The workflow selection allows you to create .github/workflow/whatever. I know, I'm
That must-
sorry. Like
okay,
you can
no,
do
no,
it
no,
by
no, that's
hand. You
fine.
can't do it with the
Okay.
API.
I don't want you to
You don't have
automate
to,
the
you don't have to
automation.
debate the.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
just,
but
we're-
it
little
sounds
surprising.
like it sounds like the solution though that we're aiming towards is automating the original setup in one way or another, be it as part of the Weaver, right after the Weaver asking someone to do something, or in some other way making it so that the type 1 tests can happen right out of the gate.
Yeah,
And
maybe
then-
one of us doing it
Yeah.
non-automatically or automatically with / manually with the
Well, maybe just after the repo is transferred over to, but the how is not important right now.
Yeah.
Sure.
Aubrey has some
I
visual.
have one last comment. Before you like spend a ton of time building that and in whatever way in the Weaver, a separate Weaver, we also want to just consider that it requires people to check it and still use it. And in the beginning stages,
They don't have to, no.
like they're running,
an
but
email
do they
or jail
serve
test.
does it serve the purpose if like it's just doing it, but like it's not actually being checked and used by
In their
people?
PR, it will have a little X if it fails.
Okay. So it,
So if they're using Git, they don't have to like use it. It'll just be there, but they do have to use Git. But that's just
GitHub.
another-
I-
Oh,
GitHub.
GitHub. Sorry, yeah.
Okay,
If
not
they're
local.
using, if they're using GitHub like in the way that we're trying to encourage people to use GitHub, then they'll get the benefits.
okay.
Alright.
In my mind, it was just like telling us it was a report, so that's good to know. All right.
So
thank
they
you.
get some feedback that you can see when you're doing it. All right, I think we've come to where we need to with that conversation.
Unless we want to ask.
We have next
this-
steps.
Yeah, we
That's what I
could
asked.
ask now before we close out the recording. The question for everyone who just jumped on the call before we start stand up officially. How frequently did you run into the situation where when you were coding your projects originally, where you would make some edit or change and you would break something such that your interview wouldn't run, and then you didn't really notice and you had to go back and disentangle that?
So maybe I'll re-describe from what I've seen. So where you like did commit and like made a PR and then it turned out, oh, your partner ran it and they were like, it doesn't actually run. There's an error. Or that you tried to run it like after merging it to main and you pulling it again or whatever, you tried to run it and it didn't actually run, even though you were sure you'd checked it and all that kind of stuff. Raise your hand if that has happened to you at all before. Man, y'all are solid. Maybe this is not necessary then. Cool.
We got one, but yeah, that's not.
We got
the
one?
majority. Yeah.
Okay.
The other use case
I
I think
missed
of
that.
is like people wanting to like let subject matter experts directly edit text. I don't know if that's going to be common or not. But
Yeah, we definitely,
Sure.
when we're thinking about eventually getting to translation, that's one of the reasons we're going to love this tool.
Well, by then we
Pictures.
should have gotten into the testing phase, I think.
Yeah. But just having something you can check. All right, I think we got the information we needed. Thank you all. I'm going to stop this recording. We'll start the next one.